Hello, boys and girls. This is your lesson number 6 for geometry. You're going to be identifying types of triangles. There are different types of triangles and different attributes that we have for the triangles. So it's going to be your job to describe those attributes of the 2D figures. And we're talking about triangles. And we're going to classify them based on their attributes. And when we say attributes, it would be something like this. Are they acute angles? Are they right angles? Are they obtuse angles? And in fourth grade, we also have to know the other names of the triangles. Is it a scalene triangle, an equilateral triangle, an isosceles triangle? So that's also going to be part of our job for today. So let's start with our task A. Here we have a list, a little double T chart of the different types of triangles based on the angles. So the first 3 triangles are acute triangles. Then you have your right triangles, which I think are the easiest ones. And then your obtuse triangles, which once you know how to identify them, you'll do a really good job. So let's take a look at the first one. Which of these are acute triangles? Well, acute triangles are going to always have 3 acute, acute, and acute angles on them. So this appears to be acute. The second one, if I look at this angle right here, it looks to be more than 90 degrees. So that's obtuse. That is not what we're looking for. And this one right here has the corner of a rectangle or the corner of a square. So that means it has a right angle, a 90-degree angle. That is not acute either. So the only acute triangle will be the first one. Why? Because it has 3 angles that are less than 90 degrees. Let's look at the next one. Here we have a right triangle. A right triangle is going to have that 90-degree angle in the corner and only one of them. If I look at the first one, this seems to have the corner of a square, so that's a right triangle. And the last one does too. But the middle one, this angle here appears to be obtuse. And remember that an obtuse triangle has 1 obtuse triangle and 2 acute. So the only answers for the middle one, for the right triangle, will be the first one and the last one. For the obtuse triangle, let me check to see which ones have 1 angle that's more than 90 degrees. If I look at the first one, this seems to be obtuse. So that one's obtuse right there. If I look at the angle right here, this is also obtuse. So that's an obtuse triangle. And if I look at the last one, the angle here seems to be more than 90 degrees. So all 3 of these are obtuse triangles. And the reason I know that is because I was looking at the different angles. There's 3 angles in a triangle. One of them was obtuse in each one of these. And the other 2, well, they were acute. So that is how I would identify the types of triangles based on their attributes of angles. Now let's take a look at another activity. Now we're going to look at triangles and say, yes, it is, or no, it's not. All right, so if we look at this activity called triangles, we're going to see some examples that, yes, they are that type of triangle, one that is not that type of triangle, and then it's going to be your job to decide if it yes, it is, or no, it's not. So here we go. Let's take a look at the first one. The number 1 says to look at the examples, non-examples, and decide. So here we go. These 2 triangles are acute triangles. Less than 90, less than 90, and less than 90. So I have 3 acute angles. Same thing here. Less than 90, less than 90, and less than 90. So we see that all 3 angles are less than 90 degrees on both of these. So these are acute triangles. A non-example, this one is going to be not acute. This one here, because it has 1 angle that is 90 degrees. And remember, for it to be acute, all 3 have to be acute. So this is not an example. So what do you think about this one? 35 degrees, 72-degree angle, 73-degree angle. You're going to ask yourself, are all 3 angles acute, yes or no? And then you pick your answer. So what did you pick for this one? Yes, you're right. All 3 of them are less than 90 degrees. All 3 angles here are acute. So yes, it's an acute triangle. What about this one right here? And remember, you're probably going to do this on your own. So Take note of how we solve these problems. These are examples. This is an obtuse triangle because this angle right here is more than 90 degrees. 102 is more than 90. This triangle here, even though it appears to be a right angle, it's a little bit wider than 90 degrees. See right there? This little extra area right there. So that makes it 100 degrees, which is more than a right angle. So this becomes obtuse, and this becomes an obtuse triangle. Now let's look at a non-example. This is not obtuse. Why? You're right, because all three angles are less than 90 degrees. So this is actually an acute triangle, not an example of obtuse. How about this one? You decide on your own. Is this an obtuse triangle? Yes or no? You have to decide. So think about it for a bit and then give your answer. So what do you think? Is this an obtuse triangle? Yes or no? Yes, you're right. It is. What makes it an obtuse triangle? Yes, this angle right here is what? More than 90 degrees. So it makes it obtuse, which makes it an obtuse triangle. How about this one right here? This bottom one. It says these are right triangles. I see a right triangle here because this is 90 degrees. And I see a right triangle here, a right angle here, because this is the symbol for 90 degrees, for a right triangle. So because I have one right angle, that makes this a right triangle. And I have one right angle here, 190-degree angle. This makes this a right triangle. So I'll even put the symbol on this side, just so that I know that that was a 90-degree angle and this was a 90-degree angle. I should have done that earlier. Thanks for reminding me. Now this one here is not an example of a right triangle. Look what you have, 35-degree angle, 72-degree angle, 73-degree angle. Do you see any of them that say 90 degrees? Nope, they're all less than 90 degrees. So this makes it an acute triangle. How about this one right here? Is this a right triangle? Yes or no? You decide. Give you a few seconds to think about it. What was your answer? You're right. No, this is not a right triangle. Why is it not a right triangle? Right, because none of these angles are right angles. None of these are 90 degrees. So we would say no to that one. What if you were asked to give in a sentence an answer that describes an acute triangle? An acute triangle has what? How would you describe that one? Yes, an acute triangle always has 3 acute angles. It's always going to have 3 of them. What about a right triangle? How would you describe a right triangle? Yes, a right triangle will always have 1 right angle. How about an obtuse triangle? How would you describe that one? Very good. An obtuse triangle has 1 obtuse angle. It's as simple as that. Now, the hard part is looking at a triangle and deciding what type of angles they have. But I always like to use my Post-it notes for that, and that helps me because I know that my Post-it notes, my sticky tacks, my Post-it notes, I'm sorry, always are in the shape of a square or a rectangle, unless I have something like this, then I wouldn't use it. And so these are 4 right angles. Okay. So if you have a partner, you can compare your definitions and discuss the differences that they make. Look at the bottom part. It says, how does your knowledge about 90-degree angles help you determine if a triangle is an acute, an obtuse, or a right triangle? How would you answer this question? Take a few seconds to answer it. I think you're right. If I start looking at my triangles and I first decide whether they are right angles or not, then I can decide whether they have more than 90 degrees in the angle or less than 90 degrees. And that's how I use the right triangle to determine the other two types of triangles. Okay, so this is my Tic Tac Triangle game. It's like a tic-tac-toe, but instead of using X's and O's, I'm going to use my two dice, and I'm going to use the triangles. So my job is to tell whether the triangles are acute, obtuse, or right, and what makes them that. So I'm going to start. Let's say that I have two people to play with. If you're face-to-face, you can play with two people. If you're virtual, you can maybe play against yourself or find a parent or a sibling to play with. So let me see what I'm going to start with. I have 3 and 3, whoopsie, which makes it a 6, and I have to look for a right triangle. Right off the bat, if I'm looking at my triangles, I'm going to check this one out. Does that look like a right triangle to you? I think it is. And I use my Post-it note to prove it. So I'm going to put the little corner right here. And I found a right triangle, which was the 6. 3 and 3 is 6. So I'm red. I'm going to put a red counter right there. Let's say that it's my partner's turn. And my partner got a 5 and a 3. That makes 8. So if I'm using 8, I don't have an 8. Okay, let me roll it again. I have a 2. So I see a 2 right here. And my partner is looking for an obtuse triangle. Obtuse. So obtuse has to have one angle that's greater than 90 degrees. If I start here and look at this angle, looks like this angle is very wide. It's wider and greater than 90 degrees. So that is obtuse. And they would put a counter right there. So you would keep going until somebody has one line of their color to make a tic-tac-toe. Okay? That's how you would play this game. You would need some dice, and if you don't have any dice, then you can just select whichever triangle you want to answer and identify and give the attributes and then put your counter on it. So this is your Tic Tac Triangle board game. What I did is, so if I wasn't able to print it, I can always write down if it's obtuse, right, or acute, and I can play my Tic Tac Triangle on this page right here. That's for virtual students. All right, so just as a review, let's talk about the different types of triangles that we've been studying today. The first one that I always think about is the right triangle, because I can easily make a right angle and then connect it. And I see that I formed my right angle right in that corner, right in that angle right there, and that makes it a right triangle. The next one that I'm going to try and make, let me make my line here, is going to be this type of triangle. And then I just connect this part right here. And I notice here that all 3 of my angles are acute angles. So this makes it an acute triangle. Now the last one's going to be a little wider because I have to do the obtuse triangle. So I'm going to start with my bottom line. I'm going to go wide, and then I'm going to connect it. Here is where I have my obtuse angle, and I only have one. So this is going to be an obtuse triangle. I told you we had other names for triangles, and I'm just going to go over them right now. The first one that I was talking about was this one right here that has, let me make it a little bit wider. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoopsie, I went a little wide. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let me start this one over again. Hold on. All right, so this will give us a better idea of the other triangles I was wanting to tell you about when you look at it by sides. The first one here is an equilateral triangle because it has 3 sides where all 3 sides are the equal length. So it's equilateral. And it's also, what do you think? If all 3 are acute. An acute triangle, yes. This here has two sides that are the same length and one side that is either longer or shorter than the other two sides. So this is called an isosceles triangle. Okay. And this triangle could be a right angle or it could be an acute triangle. I'm sorry, it would have to be a right angle. The third one is a scalene triangle. A scalene triangle does not have sides that are of equal length. So it's not going to be equilateral. It's not going to be isosceles. Each side is a different length. And this one right here is going to have the three sides. One is short, then you have a medium size that's a different length, and then a longer side. So these are also the types of triangles that we're going to be studying and learning about in 4th grade. All right, now you may have to do the triangle activity on your own. It depends on your teacher. But the other thing that I do know that you're going to do on your own is this cool down prompt. On this cool down prompt, you have to tell using words how you determine if a triangle is acute, an acute triangle, a right triangle, or an obtuse triangle. And when you do that, I want you to keep in mind what we talked about on this page. If you have 3 acute angles less than 90 degrees, it'll be acute, an acute triangle. If one of the angles is obtuse, then you have an obtuse triangle. Don't forget that the other two will be acute, but if it has one obtuse angle, it's an obtuse triangle. Then you have your right triangle where you have one of the angles that is exactly 90 degrees like it is here and here, and that would make it a right triangle. So make sure that you use this page to help you write the answer to your cool down. And that's what you're going to do today. If you have time and if you were able to, play that triangles game from yesterday. That was very helpful. And if you have a chance, also listen to the little songs that taught us about lines and triangles and the other different attributes. So I hope that this helps you and I hope that you have a great day, Tigers.